Happy Thursday, everybody. Man, we're coming off some really interesting news. Trump's coming to the Bitcoin conference. I think Adam's going to be sitting front row and center down there in Nashville, right alongside Eric. We had a Nakamoto card sell today via Emblem Vault for $140,000. Really crushing it, man. We've had now
huge sales.
Three FD cards, 2 Satoshi cards, and a Nakamoto card sale, all within the last week since Emblem markets opened. I think the interest is coming back.
It's amazing. I don't know if it's interest or just people are like, oh, Emblem's working again, maybe. You know, maybe people thought like, oh my God, I guess I can't buy Pepe's for the last year, which is possible, you know? And so, yeah, it's great to see that traction come back. I think I tweeted out today, NFTs are dead, long live NFTs, right? It's like, we know they're not dead. It's just a matter of how this is all going to get integrated and stuff. But certainly interesting news from Bitcoin Nashville. And certainly if any of you guys are going to be up there, I'm going to be up there. Love to connect. Just shoot me a DM. We'll hook up.
Yeah, and be really interested in the next few weeks when we migrate the remaining of these assets. If we could revive the Namecoin community, then I think we officially deem Emblem Vault like one of the curators of NFTs.
For sure, man. I'm excited. Like, it's one of the things, I mean, we've talked about a lot, just being able to kind of reinvigorate these communities because they're small communities and they don't really have, other than maybe a Telegram channel, great places to kind of coalesce around. And the vision of like a HNFT marketplace has always, like, it's been, this was like in 2021, people were like screaming for one, right? And so, yeah, it's exciting to finally be able to bring this to fruition.
One final news point of this morning, the CPI print came in, I guess, better than expectations at 3%. The expectation was 3.1. So the markets are pumping a little bit on that. I'm seeing news that we're expecting rate cuts in September. And so that means bull season heading into the Trump versus Biden election for the US. So some very interesting times there. Again, right, Emblem is back. If we could revive Doge Party, that would also be a really fun thing. But first and foremost, we're here with our good friend Sam from Doge Labs, one of the people behind the Relics protocol, man. How have you guys been? It's actually been a handful of months since we've last caught up. How have you been?
Yeah, it's been a while, right? No, I'm pretty good, actually. We've been doing a lot of interesting stuff in the past months. And I definitely don't want to take the credit for the Relics protocol. We are just contributors here. So it's rather for Sibo, who joined with the Relics account here. Yeah, so we are still mostly on Dogecoin assets like the ERC20s and inscriptions, but yeah, Relics protocol is something very interesting, actually. So yeah, I'm very, very happy to be part of that.
And who do we have behind the Relics account?
I'm Sibo. Hi. Thanks for having me on the stage. I'm a software dev and also one of the contributors to the Relics protocol. I I just took over the account for today to speak from here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really.
Let me. So sorry when I was cutting you in, but yeah, Sebo is always like a true dev, you know, I'm not selling him. What I want to say, like maybe a few words, like Sebo and I are friends for a long time already, and also worked together on a couple of projects. And just so that everybody can get a picture, like when we are or I'm stuck on like development level whatsoever with anything, also on the team. Like Sebo is always my last resort, you know. So he always kind of has the answer, even though he isn't very familiar with the tech stack or anything. So yeah, he's kind of the best devs I've ever met in whole Web3 so far I worked with. So I think we can probably learn a lot from him today. Let's see.
Hey, everybody has that base dev in the friend group that you need to lean on to build something. One of the interesting aspects to the builders or the ecosystem, specifically here on Runes now, we're seeing a large inflow of developers from all kinds of different protocols that are focusing here on specifically AMMs on Runes, or I guess DeFi on Runes. And I guess the term is called proto runes, is what I keep hearing passed around. But we now have, right? We had the Fluid Token guys on our show. They're from Cardano. We had the dot swap guys. I think they were from EVM. And now we have Relics Protocol, which is a handful of developers from Dogecoin and from some other protocols as well. So Bitcoin is bringing all of the best talents to DeFi. I think it's because everyone realizes how large.
Big pot of money there.
Very, very large pot of money. So I'll pass it off to either of you if you guys would like to just give a brief description of, you know, what the Relics protocol is, why build on Runes, and kind of the idea or vision behind the protocol itself.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe we are starting with some high-level context of maybe the state of AMM and meta protocols where we are currently at, and then I can put Relics into context and maybe talk about also our motivation. So yeah, probably most people in this space are aware of like different protocols in general. I think the fungible token journey on Bitcoin started off with BRC20 kind of, when like Audi minted out in the beginning, and then people were minting like crazy, and trading happened mostly like on marketplaces like Unisat until the first centralized exchanges listed some coins. And then in the meantime, all sorts of different other meta protocols were released. Most of them were in the beginning not really AMM focused. And the same kind of applied to Runes, I would say, where Casey, at least from what I heard from his podcast, his motivation was kind of to just bring shitcoin trading to Bitcoin in a technically nice way, I would say, and that's also what I think about the Runes implementation. And by design, as far as I've read from the GitHub issues and so on, he wanted to keep out AMM functionality for now. One of the reasons being that it may lead to minor centralization because there might be some sort of MEV. And in the meantime, different other protocols have, as you also mentioned in the introduction, worked on AMM and swaps, like some teams behind the BRC20 standard, for example, have been working on a swap protocol. And I think it's nice to have all this competition currently on Bitcoin, where I don't think the end solution will be to have hundreds of different meta protocols, but I think for this stage at the moment, it's good to see innovation on different branches, and then we will just see which is the strongest and remains in the next couple of years. And our motivation mainly was, okay, we did like the runes implementation in the sense that it was very basic and UTXO based. So that means it will be compatible with any Bitcoin scaling solutions in the future. It's also easier to integrate than BRC20, for example, for wallet providers. And so we thought, okay, we want to kind of build on this, but integrate AMM functionality. And so what we did is we took the open source ORD implementation. Also here, big credit to all the ordinals contributors. It's really a nice piece of software. And we kind of forked that and are now currently implementing AMM into this ORD, but with kind of a new standard, which we call Relics. So unfortunately, our implementation will not directly work for runes out of the box, but maybe like it can in the future be merged into runes, or there can be some sort of, like, I don't know, maybe we can inspire the ordinals team, maybe even Casey, like, let's just see how he likes it, what happens even after launch, and then maybe it inspires also the developers behind runes to maybe merge pieces of the protocol. Yeah, and that's where we're currently working on. It's a lot of fun. Every day there's something new coming up. Like, there's no day where you don't open up X or Twitter and you don't have any new protocol in the timeline. So exciting times, and it's definitely fun to work.
So can you give me like the smooth brain idea of what's actually happening here? Is this basically it's runes, but a new runes in the way that you're going to create new tokens and people will be able to etch brand new tokens, but it will just have easier tradability? Or just give me like the dumbed down version of what it is.
Yeah, correct. It will be, I would say, let's call it will be a competitive protocol where you would etch new tokens that we call relics, and we are actually not calling it etching, but instead enshrining. We also needed a funny word for that. And what's different here is you don't launch them in a way where people can then mint them for free, and then it's up to the order book based marketplaces to allow trading for them. But instead it's more that you mint by paying a base token of the protocol, and that is put into a liquidity pool initially. So every time you enshrine a relic, you also bootstrap the liquidity. That's kind of the difference of
So, Adam, that's like Adam. That's like, hold on, Adam. That's exactly like the idea we've talked about here, right? Of about when you mint, take a piece of that liquidity and put it into an AMM pool. Sorry, go ahead. I just want to know because we've been talking about that.
Absolutely, yeah. We've talked about the increased functionality of that. That kind of base token. Then is that just like an infinite mint that just mints as new relics are? I'm losing words already. Inscribed or whatever. How is that it, or is this like a pre-mined token, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's not 100% defined yet.
Okay.
So because we are still in development stage, like how if you are in our like staging environment now, which hopefully we can launch a testnet soon, there you can just mint the token and then it's unlimited. But of course, that should not be the production version. I think it needs to be limited in some way. But also, you are totally right that the entry should be pretty fair, because otherwise it's not really the Bitcoin spirit, and also it will probably not help the protocol in getting traction.
Well, that would be the kind of follow-up question is, okay, is this going to be like a token that funds you guys, right, and provides liquidity to you guys kind of as the founders of it, or how are you thinking about that right now?
Also not clear. So currently we are, I would say, just working on it on our own, and we don't have really high cost. We are just a group of developers and marketers, and have our income, and so this is more fun project, but of course, like everyone also does stuff for financial motivation. That's for sure, but it's all not really clear. We have all sorts of different ideas, but we first want to get to the testnet stage, and then from there on, we are flexible and decide that.
But I think maybe to add on that, what is clear that with this token, there's not going to be like a huge raise or whatsoever. So I think the most goal like is broad and fair distribution with a low level of entry. So yeah, there's no purpose on like funding a huge corporate or whatsoever.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff you could do around marketing, even for kind of a free or fair mint as like the initial token to get a lot of interest in it. If that's like the base layer liquidity token, it's yeah, you could do a lot of interesting stuff that's done in a way that's considered fair by the community. It could be cool. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah. I would be actually curious on your thoughts. Like if you would work on the comparable protocol, how would you do an initial token mint, or yeah, how would you do it?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, this is the kind of, I'd have to think more deeply about it, but my initial gut take is, you know, being on Bitcoin, you really don't want to have any kind of pre-mine thing, and I think anything like that is going to be almost shut down from the beginning. So if you have to have this token and it's not going to be kind of given out, you could do it one way. It's given out as people are actually doing the inscribing, right, or the etching. So you could do that, but if you need like that base liquidity, it could be something like a free and fair open mint that allows people to just basically buy into the protocol at the beginning, which is kind of like what I guess you would say what Counterparty did, right? Where you're almost like locking in BTC to get XCP for Counterparty. So that kind of that's been done, but that was done obviously almost a decade ago now. So it's different market, different timing, and I think there might be a lot of interest in that now. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, Adam, I'd honestly follow similar to what you were doing. How I view this is it's a quote unquote, it's a competitor to Runes, but it's its own standalone protocol. So I put this tweet out yesterday. Actually, it's funny that we're on this conversation. You know, Casey has said this multiple times that he has no intention to make any fundamental changes to the underlying protocol itself. So this allows individuals and teams the ability to come in and build on top of the application layer. This is why we've been having so many conversations with all these different individuals and teams. The Relics protocol went and just built their own runes, essentially. On the other side of this, you have BRC20, where Unisat has basically just, you know, kind of commandeered the entire protocol, and they're just building the entire vertical stack. They own the marketplace. They're leading on all the upgrades. They've built something called Fractal Bitcoin, which is kind of their programmable BRC20. It'd be kind of similar to like Relics. And then you basically just deposit your BRC20s into their Fractal Bitcoin, and you could do all these swaps and things like that. So it's interesting to see all these different kind of parallels. But what I would do, honestly, is similar to what Adam was saying with Counterparty, because, you know, you're giving a nod to Runes, but you know that a raise doesn't really work in the Bitcoin space. People want to either be airdropped it, or they want something that's like some sort of free mint. I would honestly kind of combine the proof of burn in a somewhat vampire attack, and just burn uncommon goods for your Relics token. Like uncommon goods is a tribute to Casey, right? It's infinite mint for the next, I guess, almost three years and like 8 months or so. And I think uncommon goods is actually the highest minted runes that exist. So you could just burn the runes and get the relics. I don't know if that like satisfies the kind of capital raise, but it might capture a lot of degens.
It was interesting. I was, before you started speaking, my mind went to the uncommon goods kind of strategy. And one strategy could be something like that, which is you're minting or etching this base token, right? But you're paying a little bit of a fee on top of it, which feeds into this kind of liquidity pool. But you make it maybe where if you're early in the process, you get kind of oversized amounts, and the amount goes down over time. So it is like a mint that can take a year or 2 years or whatever. So you can add, people can continually add more, but you reward maybe the early people who etch early or something like that. I don't know. This is where it gets fun and interesting to try and develop a strategy like this. But it can be challenging, man. To get it right can be really challenging. But I would definitely lean into the kind of free and fair meta. That seems the right vibe.
Yeah, I like the idea of involving uncommon goods somehow, because I totally agree that it makes some sort of sense. Uncommon goods holders are basically, I would say, the early adopters of runes, because still I would say, what are people doing in runes at the moment? On the one side, maybe minting some tokens that have very long running mints, like uncommon goods. I also saw Cook the Mempool took quite a couple of weeks, I think, to mint out. And then right now it's a bit quiet, where 2 weeks ago or so, Luminex was burning all day. So I think there are many people you can kind of reach out to by some sort of, if you want to call it vampire attack or so.
Yeah, it reminds me kind of the early Ethereum DeFi days when Sushi Swap popped up, and in order to get Sushi, you had to take the LP tokens of Uniswap and basically lock it over on their protocol. And so you basically got all the early users of Uniswap now participating in Sushi, and Sushi's still around today. I know it's had some of its faults, but it had a really large staying power, and it was basically just because the Uniswap holders, all the early adopters, they didn't have to spend any extra money. It was basically just saying, hey, I'll just default this capital over to this protocol and let's give it a try. So there's probably an opportunity there of some nature. But again, at the end of the day, Bitcoin, you have to do something kind of free and fair. You've looked at like all the people who've tried to do pre-sales on Bitcoin. It just like does not work really. I'm sure you can have some success, but it's quite tough. I do have
one final thing, Jake, is it's okay. It would be different if like the sale or part of the fee that went for minting these went into a pool and it didn't go to the team or anything. Like, I think that's different. If you're kind of like putting into the pool, that's a different scenario, right? Where it's not, the team's not benefiting in any way. You're just putting into the protocol. I think that's the differentiator here, just to make a point.
Yeah, I agree. So I have here on the live stream, I've been going through all your guys' posts on your profile, and you've done a really good job at all these threads and having nice graphics, kind of starting at the foundation of this protocol. Unlike runes, you mentioned here that you're going to have NFTs as well once we kind of move past the base asset, and it's called syndicates. This reminds me a little bit of kind of how Atomicals operates, where they have Atomicals, and then I think digital objects is the NFT. Can you dive in and give us a little bit of explanation of what are syndicates, how are they created, and are there any unique aspects to them inside of the Relics protocol?
Yeah, sure. So the idea to integrate NFTs came from, was inspired by ERC 404 on Ethereum, where, I don't know, a couple of months ago, some teams started to combine the ERC 20 standard, which is the fungible token standard on Ethereum, with ERC 721 for the NFTs. And we thought this was also kind of when the Relics idea was born, because initially we thought, okay, let's maybe try to bring this capability to Bitcoin. But then we realized, okay, AMMs is a much bigger case, and this is more like an add-on functionality, which is still very cool to have. And how we designed it is that, let's say you enshrine a relic, so you would have a fungible token then, and you would want to provide NFT artwork, could be generative art, could be PFPs for that relic. Then either you as the kind of deployer of the relic yourself, or in general anyone, could create a syndicate for that relic. And that means that after the creation of the syndicate, everyone who owns a certain amount of the relic fungible tokens can wrap their relics into an NFT, which is actually an inscription with some relics attached to it. And then This inscription will be very lightweight. It will only be delegating to another inscription that takes care of the artwork and so on. And the nice side effect of this is that on the one side, right from the beginning, relics in their non-fungible form will be tradable on all marketplaces out there, right? We just need to provide a valid list of inscription IDs to marketplaces like Magic Eden, for example, and then relics would be tradable on those marketplaces. And also it provides a nice way of enhancing generative art collections or P2P collections within protocol liquidity. And we thought this is a very nice way to combine these two features, and also something that will come with Relics protocol right at launch. So actually we plan to have the two core features are AMM and hybrid NFTs.
That's an interesting approach. And the reason why I say that is because when new protocols are created, one of the main friction points is that the long-standing marketplaces like Magic Eden have to integrate your protocol to get these listed with liquidity. But if you're creating a syndicate, which is basically an NFT that's native to the protocol, and then you're essentially wrapping it in an inscription, it's immediately tradable, and there's actually no extra lift for the marketplace. There is one extra lift for the user to wrap it, unless the protocol is automatically wrapping it itself. So that's actually quite a novel approach. I don't think I've seen that yet.
Tell us what the steps would be for the user. I mean, is it something like you have to wrap, unwrap? Is this a transaction that has to take place on base layer Bitcoin, or how would that work?
Yeah, so what you said about the marketplace integration is absolutely right. So of course it's super tough to get integrated into all sorts of different wallet providers or marketplaces or analytics tool in the beginning, and that's also what we realized and what was pretty clear to us when we started this. And so what we will ship Relics with is an open source front end, which you can imagine looks a little bit like Uniswap, but fully open source, and you can even start it as a desktop app on your computer. And here you will have an embedded wallet, which you can fund with BTC. And that in that user interface, you will have all sorts of functionality to swap relics or to mint relics or to also wrap relics into NFTs and unwrap them. So yes, you will have Bitcoin transactions in between, but what you also, I think, will have as an effect in the early days of the protocol is after many people have wrapped their relics of a certain collection, maybe because they wanted to trade it, or maybe because they wanted to convert their tokens into actual art or PFPs, then a lot of those relics will actually be already wrapped. And so people who would then trade them on Magic Eden, for example, these people don't need all this extra effort if they want to stay in the NFT version of a relic. And so there will be a little friction in the beginning. It will take some effort to set you up in the protocol, but still there's no barrier in terms of tool integration. There's only funding the Relics embedded wallet and then wrapping your relics into NFTs. And also here, of course, our goal is that in the future, hopefully we will get integrated into some wallet providers or marketplaces. But still, this is a nice way to bootstrap the protocol, I guess. And yeah.
First, I love that this is called a chest. As you're explaining this, it really reminded me of an Emblem vault, to be honest, right? Except this is a protocol level kind of vault. Yep. So I really like the novel approach to it, especially because you said you could put two or multiple inside of the chest here. Something else I noticed that I have here on the live stream for one of your threads, it says that royalties are built into the protocol and they'll go to the owner of the collection inscription. How will royalties work in this situation, right? Especially if you're listing it on Magic Eden that doesn't have royalties, or is this something that maybe a native builder on top of the Relics protocol, if they integrate Relics into their marketplace, there's an option to add royalties on the protocol level?
Yeah. So how we define royalties is as a fee that goes to the creator on certain actions that happen in the protocol. And on the one side, when you enshrine a relic, then you as the creator can configure a trading fee that will go to you from the swap pool. So that's one thing that you can do. Of course, you can also set it to 0 and then people can trade for free. It depends, I guess, what you want to launch. So this is some sort of royalty, I would say, but from the traditional DeFi space, you would probably define it more as an LP fee, but in this case, you have no chance to withdraw the liquidity. So you will kind of get the fees from the locked liquidity. And on the other side, which also contributes to the royalty aspect, is that when you deploy a syndicate for a relic, you can configure a fee that needs to be paid every time when somebody puts their relics into the NFT version, which, as you said, is called a chest. And this way, let's say an artist creates an entertaining, generative art collection where you really want to hunt for rare generations, like some Fidenza or Chromie Squiggle or Bit Blocks or this kind of style collection where you want to hunt for rare pieces. And so you're wrapping and unwrapping your relics all the time to go for something rare. Then the creator can configure a fee here, which is paid to them every time somebody wraps their relics. Also, this is fully optional, will probably not be suitable for all collections, but it's a nice income stream for creators, I think, where they don't even need to rely on having their token traded a lot, but also where they more rely on people actually like what they created and hunt for a rare collectible. And so that's something where we saw this is also quite nice.
Interesting. I like the novel approach to it. Let's hop on the other side of the fungible spectrum and let's talk about relics, which are the tokens. What's the process to creating a relic? If I want to launch Dog Go to the Moon, instead I want to launch Dog Go to the Relics. What's the process of doing this? Is it similar minting methodology that you see on BRC20 and Runes, and then what are the unique aspects to the Relics protocol when creating a relic fungible token?
Yeah. So what we really liked about Runes is that it has this commit reveal scheme where you are safe registering a ticker and there cannot be any front running. So that will be the same for Relics. You can, as long as a name is available, you will be able to register it. We are dealing a bit different with two topics, and one topic is the length of the ticker, where in our case, we design it so that from the base token of the protocol, so which is actually like the first relic, when you want to get a short ticker name, you will need to burn a larger amount of the base token. And if you just want a very long ticker name, then it will be, we don't know yet, but probably just something very cheap. And so this is a different way to Runes how these tickers can be registered. That's one decision we made. But here, it's not Ethereum domain style where any sort of company takes the revenue. It's just, we didn't make the final decision yet, or let's say we are having almost daily discussions between the developers. Should it be burned? Should it be maybe sent to the miner of the block? Should it be a mix? But something like that, at least no revenue for any sort of company. And the second thing which we handle a bit different is that when you register the ticker, that doesn't mean that the relic is mintable straight away, but instead at that point in time, nobody can steal the ticker from you, and also the ticker will be attached to an inscription. So that means that tickers can also be traded on marketplaces that support ordinal trading. And after that, you can decide when you actually want to launch it. And so these are two fundamental things that are a bit different to runes.
One question on there. So if the ticker can be traded, in theory, the commission or royalty along with that is attached to that, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So that's also tradable.
And so that royalty, I'm assuming, can't be changed once it's set at the beginning. Is that correct as well?
Yeah, that's also a topic where we can also or are also still discussing it. So what we are currently leaning towards to is that if it can be changed, then only reduced, because otherwise there's like too much risk that, I don't know, you mint a relic of a certain collection, and then the collection is actually sold, and then the new owner decides to put the royalties to 90% or whatever. And of course, this is what you want to avoid. So either it will be not changeable at all, or maybe it can just be reduced, something like that.
That's a good strategy. Yep. Because you'd always want to be able to reduce it to 0 if you know, it came to
yeah,
it.
That's right. Yeah.
That's a good strategy. Boy, it's complicated. There's a lot here, man. There's a lot here. Jake and I are smiling on the live stream because it's you know, I honestly think, you know, just from a strategy point, you're gonna have to sell this on one thing, because there's so much here, but realistically, people buy into like kind of one idea typically, or one meta that will move the needle for them. And I mean, my gut right now, just because it's kind of the thing of the day, is this idea of like you can have the liquidity pools immediately and all this sort of stuff. Seems like the win if you could get that, you know, functioning correctly right from the go, where people could immediately trade these like you know, like Solana tokens, so to say. That seems like the win, and all this other stuff would be kind of like added on nice stuff. But I don't know.
Absolutely,
that's just my gut feel at the right now. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's kind of this race right now for proto runes. There's the oil team has their own protocol. I forget what the name is. I think they're just calling it P runes for now. You have Relics protocol, and I believe there's one other one. And there's somewhat of some frustration surrounding runes right now. I think it's more just the inability for people to split up their runes is one, and also the mempool sniping is really bugging people. So if you have an avenue to satisfy any of these or solve these two problems, then there's a possibility that people may move over here. Although defeating runes is going to be a lot tougher than anything. But as Adam said, if you could carve out, you know, a niche of some sort of, you know, specific use case, and then basically become the master of that, and then expand the protocol outwards, that's probably the best way to do that. I mean, you'll get the stats of, I was looking at runes today, 2 million in daily volume, and BRC20 had 600,000 in volume, right? So there's really not much there yet. Although we know once Bitcoin pumps, there's going to be a lot of people who come back and just going to want to speculate. So I do have here pulled up a slide you have about MEV, and Casey has said publicly, and I stated this earlier, that the reason why he is not introducing new fundamental upgrades to runes is so that he doesn't want runes to be plagued by MEV, like what's kind of currently happening in the mempool, but on a much larger scale on Ethereum and kind of on Solana. But I think on the largest scale is Ethereum. How does Relics solve this? I do see it is the slide, so it sounds like there's a solution that you are proposing.
Yeah, so this is, I would say, the part of the protocol that is currently the most work in progress part, where a friend of mine is currently working on and trying to get that into the ORD code base. And here we have different ideas. Let me describe one of them, which is how we currently think to avoid sandwich attacks. So maybe just to explain it very briefly, sandwich attack is where somebody wants to swap, let's say, the dog token to the cat token. And then when the user actually submits the swap to the chain, the user must say, okay, this is the maximum price in dog tokens I want to pay per cat token. Because especially on Bitcoin, right, the user doesn't really know when the transaction will be included into the chain and what the price of dog versus cat token will be at the time. On Bitcoin, let's say the user just chooses a fee that is slightly too low to make it into the next block, and then we wait, I don't know, 20 blocks until the fee is so low again, then the price might be very outdated and the user doesn't want to pay twice the price maybe. Maybe the user is okay with that, but maybe also not. And now when the user defines this slippage, like the price difference the user is willing to accept with this trade, then other participants in the protocol, especially miners, can, for example, put one trade right before the trade of the user where they increase the price just slightly so that the slippage of the user is still valid for the trade. So they will just get the maximum they can sandwich out from the trade. Then they will put in the trade of the user, and then after the trade, they will sell their tokens again. And so they made a slight profit on the trade. And on Bitcoin, of course, this would pretty much happen on every trade. Maybe there are some, I don't know, private mempool services or so that will help you to get your transaction in, or you could also work with miners or whatever. But this would be all very complicated, and definitely no team on the world would invest their time to build this for an early swap protocol. And so that's why we thought, okay, let's on the one side focus on how can we avoid sandwiching. And here the idea is that we limit what you can do with an output that just came out of a swap in the same block. So let's say I swap dog to cat tokens, and then I have the cat tokens on a new output. Then there's a limitation of what I can do with that output in the same block. For example, I cannot put that output back into the liquidity pool in the same block and use that for a sandwich attack. There are some other ways how I could do it but then as a miner, I would need to prepare all sorts of different outputs to be able to actually still sandwich people. And then also I would need to hold certain relics and so on, would be a lot of effort. And this is one measure, for example, how we try to avoid MEV on a protocol level. We do have some more ideas that are more in work in progress now, but this is one of them. Or maybe let me just also give you one other simple one. We have also an optional feature where you can also commit reveal a trade. So if you commit to a trade some blocks in advance and then execute your trade some blocks later, then it will be sorted more in front of the block so that the miners have no opportunity anymore to sandwich or front run you in this case. And so we are working on different stuff. It's definitely a complicated topic, and I think something which really needs to work at launch, because when I traded runes myself over the past weeks, sometimes the mempool sniping was really annoying. You know what I mean? Or I wanted to buy some cool inscriptions where I was really happy where I thought, okay, oh, nice, I will get this one, and then check back on the computer a few hours later, and I didn't actually get it. So this is something which can lead to a lot of frustration.
Cool. So I have then one final question, and this is kind of like the holy grail of the probably, multi-billion-dollar question is, how are we swapping this thing? If you can evade MEV, is the swap experience going to be something similar to what you see on smart contract platforms like Uniswap and Radium over on Solana? Or is there something new and native to Relics protocol, the Emblem experience, that you guys are introducing?
No, it will be pretty much the same. Also, the front end, which we will release completely open source, so anyone can just take it and also run a swap interface themselves, or extend it with some functionality, or provide a good user experience and attach an output for fees, or for example. So it will be comparable. Of course, since we will do only layer 1 stuff and not put anything on some sort of layer 2 or centralized part with multisigs, it will be all just layer 1. So the experience will still be, let's say, Bitcoin like slow. So like trading runes or inscriptions, you will need to wait for your transactions. And yes, in some cases, you may need to set some higher slippage than as if you would trade on Ethereum, where you have a, 13 seconds block time. But still, we are currently testing it on a reg test network with a 1 minute block time, which is also already 5x longer almost than on Ethereum, and it still feels absolutely all right. We think that also once we get to the 10-minute blocks, it will feel okay. And yeah.
And so then the programmability here, right, is I'm assuming is being built into the indexer. As you said that it is being on layer 1, it doesn't sound like there's an EVM component to it. Do I have that right?
Yeah, so it's not really programmable. That would be the wrong word. We wanted to keep it as simple as possible. Yes, we know there are some more features than Runes, for example, has, and the additional features around NFTs might seem somewhat complex right now, but actually, if you look at the code changes we are making to ORD, it's not that huge. It's not like EVM style compatible. It's still relatively straightforward, should be pretty easy understandable for everyone in the Bitcoin space because it's ORD code based. And so I wouldn't call it a programmable thing.
Got it. So you guys just forked ORD, made your own changes essentially, and then adding, right, and then using your own indexer essentially. Why then do you think that Casey didn't build these things in natively himself? Just your own opinion or speculation.
So first of all, I would say it's a good question, actually. So on the one side, some of the features are actually in discussion on the ORD open source indexer. So for example, there are some discussions about combining runes and inscriptions, right? For example, what if you have runes and inscriptions on the same output? This is a little bit comparable to our syndicates, where it provides you some sort of new possibilities for generative art. So some of the features are also kind of being discussed or maybe integrated in the future on runes. And for AMM and so on, I don't really know. I think what I understood Casey wanted to do is to provide a cool technical implementations for shitcoins on Bitcoin. That's what he said. And I think he did that. Yes, now we don't really have the liquidity layer, but actually for some of the top runes, I don't really see this as a huge issue, because those will probably be listed by centralized exchanges and then be market made by somebody anyways. The same happened to Ordi on BRC20 or to Sats. Here they also didn't have any swap functionality in the beginning, and still they are some of the biggest tokens on Bitcoin. So I think runes did what they did, and maybe they will be extended with some functionality. And also what I think is, of course, there was many more eyes on runes from the overall community. So Casey needed to be definitely like much more, I would say, maybe conventional or like not so crazy experimental with what this thing can be. And so I would say runes did a great job on what they are used for. I think we will see some of the features we are working on also for runes in the future, and we can be a little bit more experimental.
Interesting. So Yeah, it's funny that Casey being conservative is the burning of runes if you mess up the how you stack the UTXO, right? That's just shows how wild that guy kind of is. Final question for me, and if anybody has any questions for Relics Protocol, you can request up or just raise your hand if you're on stage here. Two-part question. If I own any runes, like if I own Dog Go to the Moon, will we be able to wrap it into the Relics protocol, participate in that ecosystem? And then also, second part, if I'm a builder and I want to build on top of the Relics protocol, how would I go about that?
Yeah. So for the first question, there won't be any native capability, unfortunately, to trustlessly swap any runes into relics, because that would also require change in the runes protocol, and it doesn't make sense for the runes protocol to merge like all sorts of experimental protocols. And so it won't work on Bitcoin layer 1 with no third party. What could happen, what I would be excited for, is if, let's say, there would be some team to decide, okay, we will offer this as some kind of service where we may take some sort of custody, could be also as decentralized as possible, and then offer that functionality that could be seen in the future. And on the second question, which was building on top of Relics, so once we launch, and that will be somewhere within the next couple of weeks, we will make everything open source. So the whole indexer will be open source, will be fork of Ord. So also, if you understand the Ord code base, this should be also easy to understand. The whole front end will be open source. And so you are definitely welcome to contribute in the form of pull requests or to build tools on top of it. There will be no barrier for that.
Awesome. Well, I have to say that I applaud you guys for even taking this on. It takes it really takes a real amount of courage to do this and put yourself out there. The degens will just rip anything apart, especially if you don't dangle free money in front of them. Totally. So the fact that you're even doing this is it's a huge service to the community, because we're all fighting over a pot of liquidity, let alone a giant pot of liquidity of $1.3 trillion. But all of the successes and all of the experimentation really pushes all of us forward. So I appreciate you guys for doing that. Adam, do you have any final questions, or Chris, any final questions?
I guess when is the question? When?
Soon,
man, soon. Okay. We'll keep an eye out.
Chris, what's your takeaway from the conversation?
Yeah, man, I think it's super interesting. It's kind of one of my favorite concepts so far. But I think just broadly, I'm really excited about the innovation going on, on the Bitcoin protocol. This is what gave kind of Ethereum its kind of like, really growth moment, when you just had so many people kind of tinkering and experimenting on these protocols. It's really kind of the ethos of crypto broadly. And, thinking back to how little development Bitcoin had for so long, it's just really cool to see this actually happening on BTC. So definitely applaud you guys for sure. What would your expectations be for the protocol, given what you know, where you're at now? What would your general expectations look like going forward?
Do you mean in terms of like when we launch it, how much traction we expect, or what?
Yeah, just general kind of insights on what might look like an early success to you within the next few just weeks of launch or months of launch.
Yeah, I would say so over the next few weeks, we will just spend some more time on developing out the protocol, which, I would say a couple of weeks, but I cannot say if 2 weeks or maybe six weeks. That's the kind of depends on how it goes. And then, the critical part will be the launch, where, as we discussed early in the space, we are also not sure how to launch this thing. And it doesn't really matter how good the protocol will be if we mess up the launch, kind of. So this will be very tricky. So speaking for all of us who are working on this, I think we would be happy if, on the one side, we launch this in a way where the community, let's say the overall ordinals community, is happy, and where we can onboard as many people as possible from the existing community. And then, of course, like, we want to see some adoption and people building on it. And here we don't expect like an extremely huge wave of builders right in the first 2 weeks or so after launch. It's totally fine if in the beginning it's a bit more slow. So when I remember the early days of BRC20, for example, so shortly after Audi minted out, I mean, what did we have? We had Discord OTC desks, we had a super basic black and white HTML page, which was BRC20 market caps. And then slowly people started to explore the protocol and started to explore, what are these fungible tokens on Bitcoin? And I would be happy, of course, I would be happy if we see BRC20 style adoption, that's for sure. But also in terms of the adoption wave, I would be happy if this is kind of developing in the same way.
Yeah, that's going to be really hard. I would advise against that if possible, because people have moved on from that. That was like a magical kind of, once every 10 years experience. I think you guys got to come out of the gate with something that works immediately and like people can use and interact with and win on immediately. And whether that comes from like, you get some whales to put in some liquidity and really kind of bootstrap it. But where those first tokens, it's like there's activity on those tokens, and you do something that kind of, Runes wasn't necessarily able to do, which is bring like a trading and experience that's above and beyond and much better than what Runes was able to do. That would be my recommendation, take it or leave it, but that's my gut right now.
It's a good point, yeah. So yeah, I think at the end there needs to be some sort of healthy, let's say, amount of volume and hype after launch. But in general, you're probably right. Something like an Audi style mint will not work anymore today. I totally agree with that. So it needs to be definitely fully usable right away. So that's also why we are currently developing all the features we want, and then the protocol will be kind of finished. There might be some performance improvements also afterwards, but it's not like we have a huge feature roadmap after that. That will be more then based on pull requests and so on, and ideas from the community. But yeah, at the end, you're right. We will probably need a little more hype than on a BRC20 protocol creation to actually get enough attention from the community. Yes.
Well, look forward to the launch. We'll be participating. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to the Emblem Vault team. So really appreciate you guys for coming on, and look forward to that launch. We're going to wrap this up here for the day. Everyone who listened, make sure that you follow the Relics protocol so that you can follow the Proto Runes hype, see what they do, introduce some new and novel kind of unique aspects to the Bitcoin space. Adam, myself, and Chris, who work at Emblem Vault, the leading cross-chain NFT protocol. We just launched Emblem Markets. Make sure you check that out, emblem.markets. We have a bunch of new stuff coming here pretty shortly. Congrats to the Nakamoto card buyer who spent $140,000 on that Grail card. We're going to be back next week, Tuesday through Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. On Wednesday, we're featuring Patty, who's the founder of Runes Terminal. Their token just popped into like the top 5 of Runes. So we're going to have a good conversation there. We may have somebody from the Rootstock team coming on one of these days. And then, of course, the Inscription show. Make sure you follow everyone on stage. Appreciate you, Sam, and the Relics team for coming on, and Big Chief and Everyday for always coming on stage. We'll catch you guys next week. Be safe out there and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks a lot.